Hello, everyone, and heartfelt welcome to our Happy Home guest speaker with Samuel Broaden today from the Honoring Childhood podcast. We're going to be talking about facilitating tough conversations with our kids. And welcome, Samuel. I'll just give a brief overview, and then we'll go ahead and dive into this really important topic. So through Samuel's work in child development as a teacher and director, Samuel has cultivated his own philosophy for how children grow and learn, which is deeply rooted in the importance of nature and the joy of allowing children to discover who they truly are. Through Honoring Childhood, Samuel hopes to inspire teachers, administrators, parents, guardians, friends, and the world to think differently about childhood and what it means to work together to create a more kind and beautiful world. He currently resides in Oregon with his husband, Perry, and their dogs, Oliver and Maisie. And you can see more of his work at honoringchildhood.org, and then also listen to his podcast on Apple and Spotify. We're so happy to have you here today. Really just grateful for your time and presence. And welcome. We'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to have you introduce me everywhere I go. The way you just did that was so beautiful. I love it. I was like listening. I'm like, ooh, tell me more. No, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. This is something that is really like a passion of mine. And especially in the times that we're living in now, I think that it's important to be able to learn how to have conversations with our children about really any sort of topic that seems tough to talk about, right? I think for me, the most important thing that we should remember when we're thinking about tough situations or tough things that we feel like we maybe want to talk to our children about and don't know how, is honesty. I think that it's really important for us to be open and transparent with our children, whether it's our children at home or children that we may work with. Just being honest with them about, if it is uncomfortable for you or you aren't really sure how to have the conversation, talk about that, let them know. That's something that I've always tried to build into my own practice is, when things come up and the children are asking questions about something that maybe I don't know how to answer, I'll tell them that, and I'll say I really understand that you want to know about this, and I kind of do too, and I don't really know the right way to respond, or I don't really know what to say, but we can talk through it and we can figure these things out. The honesty piece is so important because I think not only is it going to kind of take the pressure off of us, because I feel like as adults, we always feel like we have to have the answers for the children, right? And I feel like by being honest with them, it kind of takes that pressure off a little bit. And then it also shows children that it's okay to not know the answer to something. It's okay to be uncomfortable talking about something. All of these things are valid and okay to do as a person. I think that's an important thing for children to learn because, speaking for myself growing up, all sorts of conversations were off limits to talk about, right? And so then I didn't really know how to figure things out or talk through things I was wondering about. And, that can lead to lots of struggles, growing up through adolescence and young adulthood. And I always just had the mindset of, I don't want these children to go through that same sort of struggle or that same, questioning period. I want them to know that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to learn new things, and it's okay to not know. And so that's what I think the piece about being honest with them really, really helps. I can give an example. So one of the tough conversations that I've had with children kind of centers around gender and gender expression. That's something that is really close to my heart, and something that I show in who I am. So on most days, I wear high heel shoes to work. And so that brings up a lot of conversations with children regarding, why are you wearing that? Who can wear that? Those are for girls, all of that. And so a lot of those conversations maybe make people uncomfortable, or they don't really understand how to talk about it, or they'll just say, oh, no, 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 it's fine. Don't ask, be quiet, because we want to like avoid the discomfort. But there really shouldn't be any discomfort, right? Because it's just a child being curious, and they're just reciting things that they have heard or seen. And so it's really just, again, about being honest. Like, these are shoes that anybody can wear. They're something that I enjoy wearing, the same reason that you are wearing the things that you're wearing is because you enjoy them and you like them. And that's the same reason that I'm doing it. And just really being honest that people are different and what that means. So that's a conversation that I have a lot. I've had conversations with children regarding weapons and violence. That is a conversation that I've had a lot with children. I allowed my students, when I was teaching kindergarten and other ages, I allowed them to explore weapon play and fantasy play and things like that with sticks and various items. And again, those are sometimes conversations where it's just, there is no conversation, right? It's just like, don't do that. But there's no real reasoning, there's no real conversation around what that means and why they're doing things like that. And so that's how I worked it with the students that I worked with. We would talk about, why is it that they're wanting to play this way? What do they enjoy about this type of play? And how can we still honor that and still make sure that we're being respectful and kind to other people? It's all about just having open conversations with children. There should really be no topic that is off limits to talk with children about, because they're curious and they see a lot of what's going on, especially nowadays when they could be seeing and watching things that we don't even know that they are, right? Because the news, all the really negative things that are happening are out there for everyone to see. And we may feel like we want to shield children from negative things, or things that are going on in the world that could be scary, which is all obviously coming from a place of love and caring. But it's also important for children to be able to have an outlet to discuss these types of things, because again, for me, a lot of the stuff that's happening right now is scary to me, right? And so if it's scary to me and it makes me anxious about what's going to happen, imagine what it feels like for them, right? And we know that it's important for us to have various outlets to help us understand these emotions and help us understand these things that maybe we don't understand. And children need the same thing as well, because all of this, all of these tough conversations, all of these things that may be happening that the children are seeing or watching can all lead to trauma, right? It can lead to those things, and children need those outlets to be able to talk about them and figure out what they mean. And so even if it's something that makes us uncomfortable or makes us anxious, that's okay. And children should know that that's okay as well. And they should know that, yeah, I know that you saw that happen and now you're worried about going to school, right? Let's use that as an example. You're worried about going to school because of the things that you've seen and the violence that you've seen on the news happening at schools, with children who are your age. That is scary, and I'm scared for that too. And here's how we together can work through that. And here's how I can help you better understand what those feelings mean. even what those feelings are called. A lot of times children don't even understand or know what the words are for the feelings that they're feeling, right? And so when we're able to have open and honest conversations and discussions with our children, when we're able to be vulnerable with them and let them into what our feelings are and giving them strategies that we have learned to help deal with our emotions, it's going to give them a better footing going forward, being able to handle the various emotions that happen to us throughout our lives. Um, it's really just about being honest and having an honest conversation. There is no wrong way to go about it. There's no right way to go about it. Um, Everybody knows their children. Everyone's child is different, and what works for your child. But it's very important that we are okay and comfortable with being honest and open with our children, and we're okay with having those conversations. A lot of the times we may shy away from those conversations, not because we're afraid of how to talk about it with our children, but because we're afraid to talk about it, period, or it makes us very uncomfortable to talk about. And that's completely understandable and valid, and an actual feeling that a lot of us have. But again, we should be sharing those feelings with our children. We should be sharing how it's making us feel and how we're working through it. Because if we don't, and we hide how we're feeling or we push it down, that's what they're going to learn how to do. And it's just going to continue this cycle of adults who can't speak about their emotions, adults who can't work through their emotions, and it's going to lead them to have, varying problems such as toxic relationships, not being able to build positive relationships, not being able to have a positive relationship with themselves. So even when we are feeling uncomfortable, even when we are feeling anxious, it's important that we're sharing those things with our children. It's important that we're sharing with them if we don't know something, if we don't understand something. It's really important to keep that line of communication open from the very beginning, honestly. Even from infancy, it's important to have those open and honest conversations, because the more it continues, the more they're going to feel comfortable being open and honest to us about their feelings, and to others about their feelings, right? And they're not going to be afraid of speaking up about things that make them uncomfortable or make them scared or any of those things. So honestly, it can be really difficult, and sometimes it's a lot easier to say it than to actually practice it, right? Because it's not something that has been ingrained in us to do, right? When we were younger, it was, you don't talk about things, right? You don't talk about things that are uncomfortable. You don't talk about things that are scary. You don't talk about these things. And if you feel scared or whatever about something, then that's just something that you have to figure out, because we don't talk about it. And so that's why now for us, it's necessary for us to have this type of conversation on how to have a conversation, because that wasn't ever something that was shown to us, right? And so that right there is such an important piece of why we should be doing this, because I don't want my children or the children that I'm working with, I don't want them to have that same experience. I don't want them to grow up and go through adolescence and go through adulthood not knowing how to express themselves, not knowing how to talk about their feelings, and keeping all this anxiety and fear inside, because we all know that that is going to not lead them to a positive and happy life. And so, yeah, it's really, really hard to do sometimes, because it's uncomfortable for us, because it's something that we're not used to doing. But I think that we just need to keep in our minds what we want our children's lives to be. because we are there to support them in becoming the person they're going to become. And so I think it's important for us to constantly have that reminder of, if this is a struggle for me, it's a struggle I don't want my children to have. So what can I do differently to ensure that they don't have this same struggle? Because that's the most important thing, right? We want our children to have better than we had. We want our children to become better prepared than we were prepared. We want them to be more successful. We want them to be happier. All of these things, right? That we say and people say all the time, but it's really about thinking, how can I actually make that happen? Because there has to be some sort of change from the way that things were done for us and the way that we're going to do them for children. If we want that to be the outcome, something has to be different. And it's important. And this is honestly one of the reasons, the main reason why I started working with children years and years and years ago, was because I wanted to be the adult that I would have needed when I was a child. And that's something that drives me in every single part of my practice that I do, is what is it that would have helped me on my journey that I could have had when I was younger that I can give to children now. And that's really how we should look at it. And it's hard and it's uncomfortable and it's scary. But it's important, and it's important work to do for our children. And so I think that if we take time to really self-reflect and really unpack these feelings that we're having about these tough conversations, we unpack the reasons behind why we're having these feelings, and we really spend that time kind of in our own reflection, we can be better prepared to have those conversations with our children. But at the end of the day, it's all about just being honest with your children. If they're asking you something and it makes you uncomfortable, if they're asking you something about sex, their sexuality, violence, things they see on the news, any of these things that could be seen as like conversations that we don't want to have, right? The bottom line is just to be honest, because if you're being honest and transparent with your children, that's really the only thing that we can hope for. And if it makes you uncomfortable or you feel like you don't know the right thing to say that. And that's going to be such a wonderful lesson for your children to see, for them to see a parent or an adult that they look up to and that they admire saying, I really don't know how to say this or what the answer is. That is such a huge learning opportunity, because I mean, as a kid, I just assumed that when you're an adult, you're supposed to know everything. And if you don't, something's wrong, which obviously is incorrect. And so if we kind of break that down for the children now and saying like, it's all right, it's cool, you don't know, I don't know either, but we're going to figure it out together, and I'm going to be here for you, and you're safe here with me, and your emotions are safe and your feelings are safe, and we can talk openly and honestly. If we're starting that off with our children as soon as we can, just imagine all of the beautiful and amazing conversations that are going to come throughout the life of your child, and between you and them, because they know that it doesn't matter what it is that they have questions about. They know that they can come to you, and they know that they're going to get an honest answer, and that they feel safe to do that. And that's a really amazing feeling. And it's something, again, that I feel like a lot of adults now didn't really have that. And that's why we see so many issues with unhealthy relationships and unhealthy views of ourselves, and why so many of us are spending so much time and money and therapy to figure all these things out, because none of it was available. And so we want to make sure that we're making that available for our children, that they know that they're safe with us, that they know their questions are welcomed, even if we don't know the answer. So honestly, if you're struggling with thinking about having tough conversations with your children, if you're struggling with questions that they're asking you, honestly, the best advice is honesty and just being open with them. Um, because if you're doing that, everything else kind of falls from that. That is the foundation for all the conversations that we should be having. And when we're open and when we're honest, we show children that it's okay to be open and honest and vulnerable, and they can do that and they can feel safe and they can work through their feelings um, in a much more positive and supportive space than if we were to ignore the conversation or not even bring it up at all. So that would really be my advice to you, is just be honest. If you're scared, talk about it. If you know the answers, talk about it. If you don't, talk about it. Everything, just talk about it, because that is, talking about things and getting them out there and talking through things with people is such an important life skill, um, for anything, no matter what in life. It's a skill that you need to have to be able to conversate with people, have relationships with people, have relationships with yourself, right? Um, it's so important. So just be honest, be okay with being uncomfortable. Um, and if you're not, and if you're listening to this and you're like, ugh, I don't know if I can do that, this makes me really uncomfortable, take some time to unpack where that comes from, and be able to be honest with yourself, because sometimes when we unpack things like that, we find out like, ugh, maybe my childhood wasn't as great as I thought it was. It's fine. Everyone deals with that, right? But it's important for us to realize things that could be done differently, or things that could have just been a little bit more positive, right? And that is nothing against anybody, really, because at the end of the day, we're all just doing the best that we can. We're all doing the best that we can with the knowledge that we have, with the life experiences that we have. And that's how it works. Maybe something that our parents did for us might seem weird now, but maybe what their parents did to them was way worse, right? And so they're trying to make these changes, and so we're trying to make these changes, and it's important for our children to know that. So if you're feeling uncomfortable with this idea, I would really suggest that you really do some of that self-reflection and that unpacking, and trying to find out why you feel that way, and then just equate that with what you want your children to have, what you want them to know, and then figure out what it is that you need to do to get them to that point. Just be honest, be open, be vulnerable, and your children will see that and they'll model that back to you, and they will have more positive relationships with themselves, with others, with life in general, um, just by seeing that and just by knowing that. So yeah, and I honestly, conversations with children is like my favorite thing to do, and I love talking about things with children, and I love allowing them to talk and really listening to what they have to say, and really showing them that what they think and what they have to say is important and it matters. And for them to know that they have power in the words and the thoughts that they have is, I mean, there's nothing else like it. And this is the way to give them that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Samuel. Oh,
Sure.
it's such a gift. Thank you for the work that you do with kids and with families, and for being here today. As you were talking, I just kept hearing the words like, be human, be human. That's
Yes,
really what
yes.
it's about. And thank you so much. So please, you can connect with Samuel at the Honoring Childhood podcast. And thank you so much for being our guest today and all the wisdom that you shared.